Yeah, so this is a fair use from the Act of 1976. Disclaimer, Section 107, under critical and teaching and scholarship and educational purposes, research. I am not making any money off this. This is fair use, fair use.
Yeah, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha HaKodash, Kahaloyim, Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rakha Kodash. Right, all praises to Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and do well. To the elder apostles, bishops in Connecticut, the bishops, the preachers, the teachers, the evangelists, and the four winds preaching in truth and sincerity, risking your lives more now than ever, the hopeful elect, the elect, Shalom. To the Israelite foreigners who phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel through your father and have come back to the fold. Shalom. To you sisters, you achwatim, who listen and learn under your husband, which is your spiritual leader, with meekness and with silence. This your brother Aram Yehuda with the lesson.
Bring up that there was a kingdom in West Africa with a name along the lines of Judah. The Kingdom of Judah in West Africa. Now, I have a couple of previous videos on this topic, mainly looking at what Leon Malavial had to say on it, since for a while, his writings on the topic were referenced quite a bit. But in this short video, I want to briefly contribute a bit of food for thought on the name, to contribute a small part to the larger conversation. Note that what is written in such a way as to look like Judah is apparently rooted in a name along the lines of Hueda or Huida. And so in this video, I'd like to discuss how one gets from Hueda or Huida to Judah. And for that, as an analogy, I'd like to note an island in the Caribbean, which the Taínos apparently called Jaimaca. The Spanish were the first to attempt to transcribe that name, and they alternatively wrote it out as Jamaica, Jamaica, and its most well-known rendering, Jamaica. Now, most relevant to this discussion, the initial consonant was spelled with the Spanish jota, corresponding to the English J. And the English later took the island from Spain, and when they did, they kept the Spanish spelling of the island's name, but started pronouncing the characters the English way. And so the Spanish Jamaica became the English Jamaica. And with that in mind, I'd like to note something in Robin Law's book on Huida. On page 19, the author notes that, quote, the name Hueda may have been noted first by Spanish missionaries, end quote. And in footnote 4 on that page, he mentions an early Spanish source, Basilio de Zamora's Cosmographia. And on page 47 recto of that work, one finds an early Spanish reference to Hueda, in which it's rendered Jura with a Spanish jota. And presumably from there, other spellings came about, but this seems to explain how we wind up with the name of the place being spelled with the character that's called J in English, or jota in Spanish. The Spanish were spelling the name Hueda with a jota, and that character was retained in Portuguese, French, and later English sources, which then pronounced it in their own ways. This would also explain why the name was sometimes spelled Juida, or J-U Latina D-A, Huida. In short, somewhat analogous to the aforementioned situation with Jamaica and Jamaica, the various spellings that look like references to Judah are apparently rooted in Spanish transliterations intended to convey a pronunciation along the lines of Huida. Food for thought.
Yeah, food for your lies, bro. This dude is a liar, but he's trying to sound like
every now and then someone on social media will...
You know, that's these devils. They trying to sound like they have authority. They're trying to sound like they know what the hell they're talking about when they don't. Right? Matter of fact, he's trying to say that Taínos named that island. Well, yeah. So this is Paleo Hebrew in Puerto Rico. So he's saying that the Taínos, which will be in Puerto Rico or in that along that area, right? Even in that area, if they were in Jamaica, whatever they want to call it, would have not been speaking some dialect of Spanish to come up with the name that he was saying that ended up being in Jamaica today, or however he wanted to come up with, because they spoke Hebrew, right?
Puerto Rican Hebraic writing. Somebody told me this was a real thing. I thought they were crazy. Loco. Then when I went down to the caves to actually check it out here in Puerto Rico, what we found was rather astonishing. Because upon closer look and examination, start to see that each continent is connected through a common language or through common characters or paleo writings or groups of writings that we find on each island. When you go down this cave, is connected to the ocean basically, you're going to find a lot of these writings. They're going to match up with the paleo. It's absolutely wild. When I started to compare a lot of these writings, they were absolutely identical to the paleo. Not the modern day Hebrew, but the original Hebrew. Whole bunch of crosses, tav.
And he said, not the modern day Hebrew, but the Paleo Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew. So they wouldn't have came up with that, whatever you're talking about, guy. Right? Yeah, this is Psalms 64. And I guess I might as well start at 2 then. It says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection, right? Oh, that's what's coming, right? They're about to put forth that Insurrection Act, right? Donald J. Trump. Yeah, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, right? That's a damn sure what they're gonna do, right? Push the Insurrection Act, order out of chaos, right? Just hide me from the secret council, right? He just had a meeting with Xi Jinping or whatever you want to call him, the president of China. I don't even know how to say his name, but the president of China. They had a big meeting. They took all the top tech and top bankers to have a conversation with China. And conspiracy, right? Right? And that's what they did. That's ultimately what they were there to do. Of the ungodly from the scheming or scamdemic, the scheming or scam, right? Kind of where you get the word scam from, right? Scheming, because it's scheming of those who do wrong, right? And that's what they do. Come on now, they about to push forth it all, bro. It says who wet their tongues, right, to get to the point, because that's what they set up guys, liars. I'm this great orator, and I know language, and I know this, and I'm this great somebody, and you're nobody, bro. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, man. Who wet their tongues like swords, right? And that's what they're doing. He's just like a hired gun, right? Try to discredit something, right? And bend their bow to shoot their arrows, even bitter words. See? So, no. That's they don't know what they bring up that said that that's like Judah, and that don't really mean that. It really goes back to so on and so forth. And weta or whatever basically means white. But when you go into when what this guy was looking up, it says something about it goes back to a bird with a long tail, which has nothing to do with weta, which means white in Spanish. So you don't know what you're talking about. See, because when they do say it means something with Spanish, when I looked it up, it says it came up with something with a type of a bird with a long tail, which the tail wasn't white. So then, why your lies don't mix up? Don't line up? Because they're lies. They're not gonna line up. You're just making up shit. So these are even bitter words. Who have sharpened their tongues like swords to aim venom. Aim. So like, let me see how to say that.
Venomous.
Yeah, venomous. As well, venomous, because that's them. They're snakes. They're devils. Venomous arrows, right? Just make sure. I'm just trying to see what venomous. It says that they may shoot in secret, right? That's what they're doing. That's what that secret council was about. They had this guy. Hey guy, you're this guy that knows about language and linguistics. So we need you to put up a lie. We need you to make it sound believable, and then just go through this thing and make it sound and make it look professional, right? So it looks professional, a lot of dummies, they jump to it. Oh, see, I don't mean that. Not to mention, especially for Edomite, he wants it not to be that, because that's the end of your kingdom, right? But everything we've been saying is coming to pass, right? Thus saith the Lord, thus saith the Holy Scriptures, right? Not really us. This is to shoot in secret at the perfect. That's us, man. Via the scriptures, right? I'm batting 1,000 when it comes to these scriptures, man. We can't lose as long as we're in these scriptures, right? suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not. See, and that's what they're doing. They don't fear and understand. Well, they don't understand. Says the wicked should not understand. So because they don't understand, they don't fear what we're saying. That's why he can come up with these things. Although it's not that. It's not really that. That's why Trump can go over there, have these conversations with whatever the president of China is. I mean, I don't speak Chinese. All I know is ni hao, right? Right? Like, I think it means hello, whatever. That's it. Right? Right, but that's what they do. To shoot from to shoot from ambush, right? Yeah. At the blameless, right? Yeah, see? Yeah, man, according to these scriptures, we're going to be blameless, Lord willing. Part of that number. One, suddenly they shoot at him without fear, right? And then they realize the Lord is going to raise up a standard. He's going to come up against them. Especially this devil trying to come with this linguistic bullshit. Lies. Yeah, this is Psalms chapter 55, verse 21. The words of his mouth are smoother than butter, right? Because this guy's trying to sound intelligent, man. He's trying to sound intelligent, right? Trying to sound like he has this authority as far as being intelligent and knowing this is, well, it breaks down into blah, 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 blah. You know, and all these different things, right? Well, he's full of it, man. He's absolutely full of it, man. You know? And it sounds smooth. It sounds good to an uneducated person or one who just don't have faith, right? And it says, but war is in his heart, right? So it's really your it's not physical, but it's still war as far as you're trying to put your so-called philosophy or your understanding, your education against our education or against our belief system. So you have your belief system, we have our belief system, and you're trying to basically you're the devil that the Bible speaks of, right? And you're going against us. It's a war, right? Was in his heart, right? Saying that's really what you think. Your heart is la'ab, is your mind, and you're using your mental capacity to come to war against us, right? With words, right? Right? But war was in his heart, which is his mind, and his words were smoother than oil, right? Just saying all these, see, go on back and go over here, and if you go down and now, you know, in English and J, and now they're just not telling you that the letter J is only 4,500 years old, not breaking this thing down, explaining to you there's no E's, no U's in the Paleo Hebrew, right? Which you wouldn't get that, especially when you're trying to say that Ephraim came up with this word, which would never have existed because they obviously somebody was speaking Paleo Hebrew on that island, right? And they wouldn't have been speaking that Spanish word. So you're making up things, bro, right? Just like you're trying to make up that Wayada is some Spanish word, and you know what I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? And it says words smoother than oil, yet they were drawing swords. See, and that's what it's mental fencing, right? That's basically what they're doing. They're trying to fight against us, right? Right here it says hostile. Yeah, hostile. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords, right? His words, the words he's using was really to get him out and say, it don't mean that. It don't mean that. See, really, it goes back to this. Really, you know, those people couldn't be the biblical Jews, the biblical Bible, the people of the biblical Bible, which there's already people who've already did studies and already tested and said that those people go back to the Bible, right? Right? The so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian are the Israelites, period. Right? Yeah, that's the listen, that's the one thing about Esau, man. He always talking like he has the authority, you know, but everything he speaks is riddled with lies, you know, like this right here. So I pulled this up, you know what I mean, and I just asked about why it up being in Hebrew? Of course, they you know, it's riddled with lies. So it says the Hebrew name Judah, Jew, is Yehuda, right? Which there's no well, the letter J is a lie, right? There's no such thing as J, right? Created in what was it, the 1500s by Giorgio Trissino. Pretty much like their so-called modern Hebrew was created by a man, Eliezer ben Yehudi, right? Which basically has German in their so-called German and Yiddish within their Hebrew. Well, that's not Hebrew, right? Hebrew would be Hebrew alone. You wouldn't have to mix it with German and Yiddish and something else to so-called make your Hebrew, right? Even right here, though, see those characters, those Hebrew characters? Those are Assyrian Hebrew characters. But see, they tell you that they're was it Jews? They call them, it's supposed to be Benjamin. So basically, they're saying they're Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. That's there, right? Which would be the southern kingdom, right? I forgot how they call it. Ben instead of Benjamin, they call it Ben. Yehuda, yeah, that's what they say. Yehuda, Ben, and Levi, right? Which that's not how you say it, right? It will be Yahawadath, right? Bum Yum Yum, and Loya, Loya, bin Lo, Hallelujah, or you know what I mean? Because it's in the law is joined unto them. The Lord is joined unto the law, right? Which would be Levi, bin Hallelujah, right? Or Loya, right? It'd be Loya, right? And not what they say, right? And then that's to get to the point. That's the Assyrian dialect, which the southern kingdom never went in captivity under the Assyrians, right? They went under captivity under the Babylonians and not the Assyrians, so they wouldn't have the Assyrian script, right? Right, even right here, they're telling you it's the southern kingdom. See, the originated from the southern kingdom, not the north. The northern kingdom went to the Assyrian, right, under the Assyrian captivity, right? Not the southern kingdom, right? See, all this thing is riddled with lies. While this guy's trying to tell you that it's Spanish and all this other stuff, but I got another one to show you that the whole thing with Esau is you're able to keep all your lies all together, right? And it says derived from the Hebrew verb meaning to praise or exalt, which really it means Yahawadath, meaning Yahweh, and then it's what do you call it? A compound word, which is Yahweh, and Thawada. Like Thawada is how you say thanks in the Paleo Hebrew. So it's Yahawadath, right? Which that's what they're not telling you, right? See, they just want to make it seem like they have the authority, and they put a bunch of lies, right? Because there's no E's, there's no U's in the Paleo Hebrew, right? In the ancient Hebrew, right? And so they want to give you that. So the name of Jacob, right, which there's no J, the letter J, right, didn't exist. Yeah, it would be Yaquab, right? And they know it because they'll have similar names, but then it's kind of like it's off. It's off because then it'll have the E's and the U's and the vowels. You know what I mean? Which show you that they know. In order to tell a lie, you have to know the truth, right? Because they'll go, you know, Yosef. Yeah, that's a Yosef, right? So, and, I'm saying, come on, bro. And then you Christians fall for it, because even in this thing, it shows you that. Because why would it be Yehuda, Yehuda, right, with an E? Even when you say hallelujah, what? Yah. So why is it not a hallelujah that doesn't exist? It's hallelujah, or really hallelujah, right? Right? So these are things that are just riddled with lies. You know? Jacob's fourth-born son, and the tribe that ruled the southern kingdom, right? So they got that right. So it says Yehuda versus Yahudah, or Yehuda, Yahudah, Yahda, Yah. In which that sounds more Wah, right? Because it would be Yahweh. So Wah, Yada, Wah, Yada. Yeah, Yahweh doth, right? Yahweh doth. That sounds closer to the truth than what they're trying to spin off. That this devil's trying to spin it off as a Spanish, right? And it says Yehuda, right? Which itself is not Hebrew, but they're going to spin it off as proud devils trying to give you the spin off as if they're the authority, right? Pronounce Yehuda, right? There's no U's, no O's in the Paleo Hebrew. There's no E's, right? You would not, the Lord's, even when, like I said, when you say Yah, hallelujah, what? Yah, you're not, you know what I'm saying? Because it says what it says, the people who are called by what? My name, right? Yahweh, right? Even when they go into when they jack it up and they start putting J's in the Bible, and they put Jah, right? Which we know that the J is false, right? And even there, under their thing, being the so-called Yehudas, right? They know to put a Y and not a J. Why is that? Because they know that J it never existed. That didn't exist. So if the J didn't exist, right? When they put in Jah and stuff like that in the Bible, then you would have to put a Y instead of the J, and that will be Yah, right? No process of elimination. It should be Yah. So there will be Yahuda, but then there's no O's. So Yahweh doth, right? Common sense, right? But not so common, because people, it contains the letters Yehud, Da, Va, Da, Ha. See? Some straight up lies. But it looks official, bro. And that's what they want you to do. They want to look like they're the authority, and they're the official authority, and they're just putting it off, right? It says, why the African Bini, why the is in Anglit, Anglistic. I'm saying it right, from the Exwada, or Iwada, right, which doesn't make sense, right? Exwada, or O Yuda, from the kingdom port of Benin, West Africa, right? So, matter of fact, right? See, but basically they're trying to just refer to it. It can't be Hebrew, right? That's what they're trying to say. Basically, that's what they're trying to say. Store connects to, but I got another one. I got another thing where it breaks it down. It actually say that it means praise in the Hebrew. Then in the same article, the same thing and try to tell you that it's not Hebrew, right? So connects the name why it is linguistically from the location Xwada GBE language. They say it's not Hebrew, right? They say it's not Hebrew, which they're full of shit because the things that they're putting is not Hebrew, right? There's no J's, right? They put the Y. Okay, you put the Y, but then there's no E's. Okay, well, you know that, and then you put a bunch of O's to pronounce it. There's no E's, there's no U's, right? Now Hebrew, though it is often misspelled or translated in various ways, which is stupid. That's kind of pretty much the same thing they do here. You were Negro, then you were colored, then you were you know what I'm saying? Then you were Afro, then you were black, then you were Afro-American, African-American. See how they want to keep trying to move the bar, keep changing it, right? So that leaves me, you know, at least for me or for anyone, it should leave you leery because that's how they have done us, right? Right? Note that the contents of the modern Hebrew created by Elazar ben Elazar ben Yehudi was a person not recent or related to the West African port of Right. So they're trying to say this guy's the authority. See what I mean? Matter of fact, let's look up this guy. Right? This devil, right? Oh, tell you right here. Elazar ben Yehudi, born, was it January 7, 1850. So this dude's so Hebrew was an ancient language, right? But they're saying this dude is the authority on it, right? Born 1858, died 1922 in Jerusalem, right? Elazar ben Yehudi was a Russian Jewish. It was linguistics, right? So saying he knew he has his whole language and all this stuff. So when he So yeah, Eleazar ben Yehudi, 1858 to 1920, was the driving force behind the revival of the Hebrew as the modern, right? But the Hebrew would never be modern; it would always be ancient, right? It tells you. In the scriptures, we understand it as the language of the heavens, so it's ancient, right? When you go into what's his name, Eber or Heber, right? Which means to carry over, which means he carried over the old language. So you wouldn't have a modern language. This is what they wanted. This is what they're trying to spin off to you, right? So they spinning off lies to tell you that the truth is a lie, and then place the lie for the truth, right? Which they told you that would happen via the scriptures. You're gonna have someone who say what's good is evil and what's evil is good. That's basically what he's doing. This is evil, right? And it said, spoken language, transferring it from a purely intellectual tongue into a daily language for the Jewish settlers in Palestine. But see, remember, they said that they knew who they were. They got records all the way back to Moses. So you wouldn't need, if you already have the records all the way back to Moses and you already knew you were the Jews, there's no way that you need to be retaught the Hebrew. See what I'm saying? These are the things they want to interject unto you, right? But we're telling you, we didn't know who we are. The little bit of Hebrew that I know, even the elders and stuff, some brothers are really more deeper into it than others, you know, which even the brothers who's deep into it, there's a lot more expounding that needs to be done because we lost our heritage. But they would tell you that they've never lost their heritage. They go all the way back to Moses. So you wouldn't need to interject a modern Hebrew if you have the rec all the way back to Moses. That means you still should be speaking the ancient Hebrew, right? This is the things they want to tell you. Right? It says he coined hundreds of new words, right? Of course, because he started using e's and you's and thous that's not there. Published the first modern dictionary, right? And raised his son as the first native, right? So see how they interjected? Now his son is the first native Hebrew speaker in centuries. Oh, but you said you have the documents all dating all the way back to Moses. So there's no reason why you should have to reintroduce the Hebrew, right? Let's see if I can do it. Okay. What languages, plural, are in the, since he's the modern Hebrew. So I'm just putting what languages are in the modern Hebrew. Sim, right? Semitic build, right? Sim, which his name is Shum, right? Built upon ancient Jewish. Yep, there's no such thing. The J doesn't exist. E doesn't exist, right? There's no such thing as Jewish, right? Because there's the Israelites. You would never hear Israel, because basically he's just saying that all Israelites are Jewish, but that's not true, right? Even though the scripture does say that if all the tribes will be Judah, but no person was going to tell you that all the tribes are Judah, right? You know, that's in a heavenly sense, but not a legitimate sense. Legitimately, there's 12 tribes. You're not just going to claim you're the 12 tribes, even in heaven. It literally tells you there's going to be 12 gates with 12 angels, with 12 different stones, with all the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. It's not going to be just, oh, these are just the Jewish. That doesn't exist, right? Text, but sounds, grammar, and Vocabulary.
Vocabulary.
Yeah, the vocabulary were heavily spared by the what? Native European. See? A native European is not going to have the ancient Hebrew, right? By the native Europeans, mid-eastern language, it is
Revivers.
and immigrants. Okay, there we go. That's what I wanted. That's what I was looking for. See, they want to give you a bunch of freaking runaround. See, okay? Historically, Jewish diaspora language, right? There we go. That's what I was looking for. Yiddish, the native German, Slavic, what is it? Hybrid. There's a hybrid language of early European Zion. Cut out. Right? Because the ancient language goes all the way back, bro. You wouldn't need German to be introduced into the Hebrew. That would not make it Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they're right there. Keep going. Was it Yiddish, German, Slavic, hybrid language? Let's skip down. What it says, language of early European Zionists, profoundly altered, what? Altered Hebrew pronunciations, right? And changed the gutturalus all. It's like, yeah.
Guttural.
Well, that's why guttural. Assist of ancient Hebrew into a softer European sound. What the fuck? So that's in the Bible? That's in the Bible? Cut it out, bro. Cut it out.
In America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the transmission of the Torah were converts. Africa has perhaps hundreds of millions of people with this identity right now of being from the people of Israel. Does that mean they were from the 10 tribes? Likely not. We were taught by the historians and within our own traditions that when the Romans conquered Judea a few hundred years after that the tribes of Israel went into exile, perhaps millions of Judeans were sold into slavery. Into Africa, into Rome, deep into Africa. And if you look now, you're seeing people who are most likely the descendants of those slaves who kept true. I'd like to bring up a few specific examples because they're going to be game changers. One of them wrote letters to Israel when it became a state. And they said, we're Israelites out in Africa. You know, everyone laughed at them and they said, African Israelites, these people are just trying to jump on the first world country bandwagon. They're living in a third world country. They got nothing. We're coming to Israel. We got innovation, technology. So they're trying to get on this train because there's such a thing called the right of return. All descendants of the Jewish people from around the world are able to move to Israel. So they said we are also. And everyone kind of laughed at them, like I said. And a few people took it serious and went out there and started studying them, learned about their culture. And a professor from Duke University went out there and did DNA testing on them. And he showed not only did they share Semitic genes from people who were in Yemen back to the Middle East, these gentlemen, a large percent of them, have the Y chromosome to be Kohanim, to be priests. Now, if anyone who doesn't know, a priest is a specific family clan of the nation of Israel who come from Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first priest. And anyone descended from Aaron has the status title priest. And we found that these men in this village in South Africa called Lemba, L-E-M-B-A, carry this genetic marker to let us know that they share the same as from the Sephardic and the Ashkenaz and the population of the people in Israel today. They share the same exact DNA marker. That's mind-blowing. So everyone kind of got humbled a little bit who laughed at them and said, now what? Now what do we do about this? This could have tremendous implications. Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them, also Christians, like I spoke about before, how that could happen to the children of Israel very easily. But also a lot of them are now coming out and converting back or adopting the rules of the Torah without all the paganism that they've been practicing for hundreds of years. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the
Yeah, so this is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 18. It says, in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt, which we know that that's speaking of America, spiritual Egypt, which is America, will speak the language of Canaan, right? Which right here it says the language of Hebrew, of the Hebrews of Canaan, right? Because we lived in what they call the land of Canaan, right? Because that was the promise that the Most High had given, you know, to Abraham, unto Isaac, from Isaac unto Jacob, that we will have that land where the Canaanites dwelled at, because he will be a servant of servants, right? You know, for what he did. And then we were going to get that land because it was meant to be a punishment from the Most High, from on high. Not that it was anything that had to do with us. It was a punishment from on high, but that was the land that the Lord gave us. But it's going to be what? And swore, see, he promised it, and swore allegiance to Yahweh of hosts, right? And that's what we do. And swear, right? That's what we do. Swear, making an oath to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai of hosts. One shall call the city, one shall be called the city of destruction, which is talking about Babylon, right? Which is America. It's going to be the city of destruction. It's going to be completely destroyed, right? The 5 being what? The Edomites, right? Edomites have control over us, right? There were 5 Edomite tribes, and Amalek is the youngest, but it said the least of the flock is going to draw one of the brothers out to be destroyed in World War III, right? Which that's talking about America, right? Which is Egypt, spiritual Egypt, right? It's going to be the city of destruction, which that's America, right? The day shall there be an altar, which that's America. America's also known as the altar, right? Because this was going to be a great sacrifice of heathen and Israelites, right? Of all cultures and nations and people, right? Because this is that they call it the melting pot, right? This is going to be that cauldron of scum that need to be melted out, right? It needs to be cooked out of this place, melted out, right? This complete scum of a freaking place, right? You know, so in that day there shall be an altar, which is America, to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, in the midst of the land of Egypt, right? So Egypt in itself, which is spiritual Egypt, which is talking about America, is going to be that altar, and a pillar at the border thereof, which is talking about starting with the apostles, being the prophets. They're going to be pillars, right? Those churches, 7 churches, 7 pillars, right? The pillars, right? Starting with the apostles on down, pillars at the borders thereof to Yahweh. Yep. Thereof. Yep. See, to Yahweh, which would be the elect. Right? So you said. Yeah, oh. Memorial stones. Yeah.
Memorial.
Yeah, which is the elect, right? You know? Tezion, where you get the word Tezion, right? Which means memorial, right? Memorial stones, which the Lord said that we are lively stones, right? Yeah. So that's ultimately what it is, man. That pure language, back to the Hebrew, not mixed with, what was it? Yiddish and Yiddish and German and some other stuff, whatever else it was mixed with, right? Yeah, so this is Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. For then will I turn to the people, right? The people, what? You so-called black, Hispanic, and Native Indian. You Israelite foreigners who phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel through your father, right? Not through your mother, right? That's not biblical, right? And everything that they do and everything that they say is all lies. It's never biblical. They say it's to the mother. They say there's E's, there's U's, there's O's. That's not in the Paleo Hebrew, right? The Lord said He's going to return to us what? A pure language, right? That would be the pure Paleo Hebrew. Hey, well, there you go. To the people, a pure language, which would be the Paleo Hebrew, not just some Hebrew that's mixed with Yiddish and German and European. That's what they say, European, to make it smoother for transition. Well, how is that anything? Because how do you put? What did you put from Europe? What, Spanish, English, French, Dutch, Portuguese? What did you add to it? Right? Because if you do that, it's no longer Hebrew, right? That's why the Lord said a pure language, which we read in the other verse. It said Hebrew, right? And that Hebrew is going to be what? A pure language, that they may all call upon my name, Yahweh, right? Which that's the true name, Yahweh, the existing one, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, he who saves, or he is salvation, right? Tells you that in Matthew 1 and 21. He is salvation. It gives you the definition of his name. He saves his people. He saves. That's Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai. He saves, or he salvation. You can't get anything else out of that. You can't get sus pig, right? Right? Or Jesus, like, right? Or Joshua. You can't get that out of that, right? So it's call upon his name to serve him with one consent. Then will I give the people, right? The true Israelites, the true Hebrew Israelites, a clear and pure speech from purified lips, which would be the Paleo Hebrew, which reflect their purified hearts, right? Which goes back into the mind, la'ab, the mind, the heart, that all of them may call upon the name of Yahweh, right? Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, to serve him so
Shoulder.
Serve him shoulder to shoulder, united. Oh, right. Because the 12 tribes are going to be back together, right? It's not going to be no longer the southern kingdom and then the northern kingdom separated. It's going to be one. We're going to have unity. It's going to be all 12 tribes, basically the tabernacle of David, right? You know, complete unity. So with all that, I'm going to give all praises, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash. I'd like to give double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and do well. To the elder apostles, bishops in Connecticut, the bishops, the preachers, the teachers, the evangelists, and the four winds preaching in truth and sincerity, risking your lives more now than ever. The hopeful elect, Shalom to the Israelite foreigners who phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel through your father and have come back to the fold. Shalom to your sisters, your akhwatium, who listen and learn under your husband, which is your spiritual leader, with meekness and with silence. And the Bible Ball, Kwame Sharala, Lord willing, this was edifying.